As the Denver Broncos run game has struggled to get going so far to start the season, Tyler Badie has come in and has cleaned the toilet bowl of the Broncos rushing attack. Is that good enough for him to be running back one? We think there's a really strong case that he's made. We'll break it all down and much more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Broncos Country, what's up? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com. Together, we bring you a daily conversation as it pertains to your favorite team, the Denver Broncos. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And Broncos Country, here's what you can expect on today's episode of the show. What we're going to break down here, the Broncos offense, Bo Nix, a much more complete performance in Sunday's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What was it exactly that Bo took a big stride in terms of operating the offense there? We'll highlight some of those strengths here today. And on top of that, Alex Palczewski coming in and stepping in at the right tackle position with Mike McGlinchey on injured reserve. We look at the immediate future at right tackle. We also look at potentially what the Broncos' plans are at left tackle. And we're going to kick things off, though, with the controversy of the week. Not really a controversy if you're following the tea leaves. If you decide to play the hot hand here, Tyler Badie should be the Broncos running back one this week against the New York Jets if Sean Payton decides to run with the hot hand. We're going to open it up there. And look, Sayre, I think so much of the conversation here on Twitter and on Threads, I'm spending a lot more time on Threads now, which I encourage a lot more people to do as well to avoid kind of the craziness of that other website and that platform there. But a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue about Tyler Badie. Look, and I know that people are going to say, well, a year ago he was on video saying it's Badie. Folks, trust me, I know, I saw that. But the one thing that we have to go over here is that we have talked to Broncos PR. They did say that Tyler Badie told them it is Badie. So that's how we're going to go until it changes or anything like that. But with that said, Sayre, the run game has not been good for the Broncos in the last year and a half. And suddenly a little bit late in Sunday's game, Tyler Badie kind of opened things up a little bit to the point where I think we should have a serious conversation here. The lack of production and efficiency from Javonte Williams has definitely been concerning, but Denver can't wait anymore, in my opinion, for him to get going.
No, they can't, Cody. I mean, when you look at the first three games of this season, both Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin producing at an unacceptable rate right now, each of them respectively averaging 2.2 yards per carry. Javonte Williams, 24 attempts, Jaleel McLaughlin, 18 attempts. It's pretty concerning / I guess encouraging that Tyler Badie averaged 8.6 yards per carry in the last two games in which he's been promoted from the practice squad. He leads all running backs on the Denver Broncos roster right now with 86 rushing yards. That's 34 more yards than Javonte Williams. It's 46 more yards than Jaleel McLaughlin. And obviously we saw the burst, we saw the speed, we saw the vision, we saw him not just on a 43-yard run, Cody, but I think we saw Tyler Badie really run the ball well between the tackles. He just feels like he gives the Broncos run game a fighting chance right now, which is sad to say because look, Javonte, we all know he's a heck of a pass protector, a weapon as a receiver, and it hasn't worked out for him the last 2 years, unfortunately. And I don't know what the Broncos are going to do with that. That's, I believe now 13 straight games for him, averaging less than 4 yards per carry. And it's gotten, it went from being like, okay, it's in the threes last year to this year. I mean, we're talking about 1.5 yards per carry last week and 2.2 yards per carry overall this season. It's just not an acceptable figure for the Broncos. And it's not acceptable for them to continually be giving him the ball with those numbers being produced.
Yeah, and it really, I think, changed the Broncos' game plan coming out in this game. I mean, their first three plays, they passed the football, and they were able to get some stuff going there with Bo Nix. And I kind of felt like for this game, the run game there really was Bo Nix being the team's leading rusher until Badie ripped off that 43-yard run there in the fourth quarter. I mean, the thing I like about him is you just see the explosiveness. He was clocked, according to NFL Next Gen Stats, as the third fastest ball carrier in week 3. And look, we all understand, like, Javonte has battled his way back through a very, very tough injury. But at this point, right, as the Broncos offense is trying to figure out what their identity is, what this team in general is trying to figure out in terms of what their identity is, you have to be able to run the football. And I think it's no coincidence that anytime Tyler Badie has touched the ball in his career, whether it's going back to 2022 where he caught a pass from Russell Wilson, went for a touchdown on his first ever touch, he scored in every single preseason game. This is the one game so far that he's appeared in where he hasn't scored a touchdown, and obviously, but he opened up the run game in between the tackles, more importantly, which I think is super crucial. You have to be able to run the ball inside. You have to be able to run it outside. And I don't think teams respect, like, really that when Javonte's in the game. And it's nothing against Javonte. It's just when you look at Badie so far on the small sample size we've seen, you watch it on tape, it looks like his vision and seeing the hole or seeing the cutback is there far more consistently than Javonte. That is an issue. Now, we got to look at the overall outlook of this room too, right? So factor in, okay, Javonte struggles, but they emerging here as a guy with the hot hand here for the Broncos run game. Jaleel having a touchdown in this game. Audric Estime is set to come back in the next 2 weeks off of IR. My question here, from a coaching standpoint, for Sean Payton and the staff, should the hot hand be the approach to the run game, or is he going to stick with Javonte in hopes that he gets going? I think at this point, Sayre, Denver's got to go with the hot hand approach because that's how you can start to figure out what's working, what's not. And it also allows them to maybe game plan for the future.
And that hot hand approach is something that you and I talked about last week. Remember when Sean Payton was asked, hey, why didn't Tyler Badie get any more carries after that 16-yard run against the Pittsburgh Steelers? He's like, well, it's just easier when you involve the top two guys in your running back rotation. He basically was saying you have to kind of design plays for that third guy. And my thought is, after watching all these years of Broncos running backs cycle through Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak and all these guys, I'm like, just give the ball to the hot hand. It seems as easy as that. Whatever play you're going to run for Javonte or Jaleel, run it for Tyler Badie. He's actually getting past the line of scrimmage, So I found that to be a very odd reason from Sean, but then obviously we saw the game plan shift this week. Tyler Badie did lead the Broncos in rushing yards and carries at the running back position, and he did not lead the team at that position in snaps, but that doesn't matter. He was the most effective guy with the snaps, and I agree with you. You got to play the hot hand. The tough part now becomes, how do you play these roster gymnastics? Because as of right now, Audric Estime, not counting against the 53-man roster, being that he is on IR, and Tyler Badie is not even currently on the 53-man roster at all. He's on the practice squad. So you've got to promote him to the active roster, and then you've got to deal with, okay, what do we do when Estime comes back? Because I personally believe that Estime has to be a major factor. Creating yardage after contact, that's non-existent with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin right now. Audric Estime does that exceptionally well. So when he comes back, he's got to have a big role. What does that mean for Blake Watson? What does that mean for Javonte Williams? What does it mean for Jaleel? I don't know what it means ultimately, Cody, but these roster gymnastics are going to be very interesting in the coming weeks here as the Broncos welcome, specifically Estime back to the 53.
And look, I'm not calling for this, nor will I ever call this for any player, but I could see a scenario here where you do have a Blake Watson on the 53-man roster. And look, him being inactive and you promoting a practice squad guy where the practice squad guy is getting reps, I understand you want to protect and you don't want to lose out on a guy. You don't want to lose out a guy like Tyler Badie, though, at this point, too, with what we've seen from him and his body of work overall through the last 3 seasons. He does have those flashes to him. Could see a situation emerge, kind of what the Broncos did with Philip Lindsay a couple years ago. Wonder if we do see Javonte somehow released here in the regular season. I mean, it would be a shocking move, but as you mentioned, this roster gymnastics, Denver doesn't have much room right now to do a lot of shuffling at other positions, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm very, very curious about that. That's going to be something I think we see play out here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, considering when Estime is set to return. And look, I think he's been walking around fine. He's been looking good. So we'll see where things are at with him when that time comes here. But we want to know your thoughts, Broncos country, on what Denver should do at the running back position. How should Sean Payton handle this? Make sure you let us know if you're watching or listening Locked On Broncos, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. But it also opens up questions, too, about the Broncos roster because one former undrafted rookie free agent stood in at a starting position on the offensive line. What is going to happen with Alex Palczewski after we saw his impressive performance on Sunday? We'll break that down here in today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn, it's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to the perfect role, maybe the role that you have available. And in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users, they don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses, you wear so many different hats. You may not have the time or the resources to hire, and LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and even quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. It is a good problem to have when a guy making his first start at the right tackle position pitches a shutout. Alex Palczewski has given the Denver Broncos a lot to think about, and Cody and I a lot to talk about here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But before we talk about maybe the breakout game from the starting right tackle in Sunday's win against the Bucs, Cody and I want to say thank you so much to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Thanks so much for rocking with your boys. You know that we got you every single day covering the latest news and everything surrounding the Denver Broncos, especially after a victory. It's always fun to come in and talk about the game, Cody, and talk about the details of the game and hear from everybody else, their observations. We read through all the comments and things like that and see what stood out to the fans that are watching the game as well. But I think we would all agree Alex Palczewski played a great game. We notice it during the game because, well, when nobody's mentioning Palczewski or when he's not getting called for penalties and when Bo Nix is not getting sacked, you obviously say, hey, man, he must have played a really good game. I went back and watched it on Monday morning. Man, the Buccaneers sent 5-6 different guys to his side of the line of scrimmage, could not get anything going in the pass rush department. He was really, really impressive in this game and has given the Broncos maybe something to think about if he continues playing this well.
Yeah, and look, I was very impressed with Palczewski, and I think the one thing that makes kind of the vision for him clear, as Sean Payton would say, is that he's always indicated that Palczewski is going to be a right tackle. He's not a guy that's going to be a swing option for them. Right tackle is firmly his place, and obviously got more college games or college starts than Bo Nix, just by 3 games, 64 compared to Bo Nix's 1 there. But yeah, I think what you mentioned stood out on tape. You're not seeing pressure from the right side. You weren't seeing anything that was concerning. Whereas I look at the left side, I felt like there was more pressure coming off the outside left side here in this game. Coming from Garrett Bowles' side than it was Palczewski's, which I think you look at that, okay, is that just design there? Because ideally, if I'm Todd Bowles, I'm saying, hey, they got a new right tackle this week. I'm going to do whatever I can to try to pressure that side and then maybe win our one-on-one backside against the left tackle. You look at they did send those pressure looks, but Palczewski, good footwork, good initial communication. I thought he and Quinn Miners did a really good job playing off one another, communicating, double teaming effectively, and then also adjusting, hey, I got to step one-on-one on the outside on some of these situations. Bo didn't have any pressure or any kind of hesitancy from anything on the right-hand side. That was a promising development. Now, granted, it is just 1 game here in the regular season, but we all know that Palczewski is going to be the guy, at least for the next 3 games, as Mike McGlinchey continues to battle his way back from an MCL injury. He'll obviously have to come off of injured reserve at some point, but I think Palczewski, his first career NFL start, I came away very impressed with how he managed things, especially against, a speed pass rush or even power rushers. I thought he did a really good job with his hand placement inside, communicating, with Quinn, being able to, I'd say, adjust his lateral step, his kick step was good. He didn't give up anything inside, didn't give up anything on the outside. Solid, consistent performance. You want to see him continue to stack that. But I also want to kind of create the question here, right? Because, look, there's not going to be a controversy here. Like, we just talked about the running back position and Tyler Badie and his emergence, what that means for Javonte Williams. Think you have controversy at that position, whereas right tackle, you really don't right now because Mike McGlinchey was the long-term guy that was signed for that position. But what will the Broncos and Sean Payton do when McGlinchey returns? I mean, right now you look at it, he's going to slide right back into the right tackle. But What does that mean for Palczewski, who's getting good reps, getting on-field development in meaningful regular season games? To me, I think Denver has to look at the future, not just here in 2024, but also think beyond 2024. Garrett Bowles in the final year of his contract with the Broncos. Well, I was asked a question, and it got me thinking. Could Mike McGlinchey switch to left tackle in 2025? Granted, in the NFL, he's played right tackle, but at Notre Dame, he's had starts at left tackle. So, I mean, this is a little long-term. It's not in the immediate. But what do you think about that? Because it got me thinking about things and how Palczewski played. You liked it. You didn't have any concerns with him. It was a good sign. But now it's like, what do you do at left tackle?
Well, the first thing I think about, unfortunately, is a quote from Tristan Wirfs, Cody, that I can't get out of my head. Anytime anybody says, hey, you might be switching to the tackle positions in the NFL, what's that like? And Tristan Wirfs said, it's kind of like wiping yourself with the other hand. You know, whatever hand you use right now, it's like using the other hand. So if the Broncos got to ask Mike McGlinchey to use the other hand, he's getting paid enough money to be able to go ahead and do that. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility if Palczewski plays really well in these next handful of games. Look, Palczewski is a guy the Broncos paid a high guarantee to when he came out of Illinois. They obviously had a draftable grade on him in the 2023 NFL draft. They hoarded him on the active roster last year, actually had him on IR for a little bit there, but I think he was healthy, pretty quickly after being placed on IR. So they kind of hoarded him and protected other teams from trying to snatch him up after a good preseason. And this year, much the same, right? And Sean Payton has even said, like, Palczewski, he's pretty strictly a right tackle, right? And I think the athletic limitations, like, nobody is saying, hey, those don't exist with this guy, or they don't matter for this guy. Like, the athletic limitations kind of do keep him in that right tackle only slot. But with Mike McGlinchey, you might be able to throw him on the other side. Now, that might be a stretch, but at the same time, it's a possibility that I think we need to mention now, because in the future here, when Garrett Bowles' contract expires after this season, are the Broncos going to re-sign Bowles, who turns 33 in May, right? Are they going to bring him back at the current tackle market price? And do they want to go another direction in the first round of the NFL draft? Because this draft has a lot of playmakers in it, Cody. This class upcoming, we see them starting in Boulder and then working your way out the rest of the country. There's a lot of playmakers in this draft that could help Bo Nix be better. Yeah, there's certainly some tackles as well. But the Broncos, I find this offseason to be very interesting. And yeah, we want to talk about the Bucs right now. But at the same time, when you're talking about all these roster gymnastics, the tackle position is a major factor. And I love that we're getting a look here at Palczewski to kind of make these questions a little bit more difficult going forward.
100%. And look, early on in the season, Garrett's been banged up. He wasn't on the injury report going into Tampa Bay. But under the situation, if that ever comes up where Garrett gets banged up, is unable to play, I would feel much better with Denver sliding Mike McGlinchey over to left tackle than Matt Parrott stepping in and starting there. And look, right now, Parrott is the jumbo package guy for Sean Payton in this offense, but I just feel like the consistency factor isn't necessarily there with him. We saw it in the preseason. Look, Bo played with him a little bit in the preseason. I remember that Colts game specifically. One Colts pass rusher put Parrott really into the lap of Bo Nix. We saw that in week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. The same exact thing had happened in that situation. So you have to figure, okay, hey, how can we shuffle? Like Sean talks so much about, we want the right 53-man roster. We want the best players on the field. Well, now you're getting a look at some of these younger guys who I think are making cases for themselves at certain positions that they may be better. And so if there is a struggle, if there is an injury, I think you can put Mike McGlinchey at left tackle. But Mike's got to get fully healthy first. I know we're playing some roster gymnastics here on the show, diving into some hypotheticals, but this is stuff that you have to consider at some point this season, especially when you see a young guy like Palczewski performing and playing well, in which the rate he has so far in his first start. And look, I think it's going to be another good test for him in these next couple of weeks because, hey, you're going to be playing the New York Jets. Then you're going to come back and you're going to play the Las Vegas Raiders and Max Crosby. And then you're also going to be playing the Chargers after that. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. So this is a good test here, I think, to see, hey, where is Palczewski here? Good start for him so far in his first game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The next 3 games, though, are going to tell us a lot about him and also where this offensive line is and maybe some of the things that Denver can do in the future from a personnel standpoint. We're looking at the future now, old man. We're here. This conversation here, today's episode of Locked On Broncos. Always eager for your thoughts, Broncos Country, as we continue on. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Bo Nix and his performance on Sunday. When you look at week 1 to week 2 and going into week 3, you saw a lot of growth from Bo? In what areas did we see the biggest step forward? And what are some critiques that we still have about his game? We'll highlight that here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. And you know what? The Broncos, they won against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 3. They finally got on the board. But you know what? The New York Jets, their opponent for week 4, they also had an impressive game. And the FanDuel has them as a 7.5-point favorite, the New York Jets here ahead of week 4. So you want to go check out FanDuel, monitor all that throughout the week, and see where you may want to place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com.
Bo Nix is going through the rookie growing pains, the ups and downs. The first 2 weeks of the NFL regular season for him featured a lot of downs, some ups, but week 3 showcased a steady line of a upward trajectory and some things that maybe, hey, you can carry on and you can adjust going forward here as the Broncos continue to get deeper into their schedule. We'll break that down here in today's episode of the show. Real quick, want to thank all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Just a reminder, as always, you can get this show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure you subscribe or follow if you haven't done so already. Sayre, I wanted to go back after obviously watching the game back again, looking at Bo and his performance on Sunday against Tampa Bay. I was very impressed. Look, I think when you look at the tape, there's about 95% good, and a little bit of 5% like, hey, don't do that. I would say my biggest critique, I'll start off with the critique first. My biggest critique on Bo Nix, it happened on a free play, right, where the Tampa Bay jumped off sides. He's running around. Sometimes he carries the ball with one hand and kind of holds it out there to where someone comes out and punches it, it's going to fall free. Luckily, there was that free play where Tampa Bay was offsides, and Bo did get, have a fumble, did lose it there. I want to see him protect the football a little better in that regard when he is carrying it. Aside from that, not a lot of critiques from this game for Bo Nix.
Yeah, there were some opportunities that he had to maybe take some shots, pull the trigger a little bit quicker. Cody, when I watch back the game, I watch our good friend Tim Jenkins kind of break down some of his throws and try to see what Bo is seeing out there on the field. And certainly there's big plays to be had. And I think that over time, we're going to continue to see him take those shots. Now, against Tampa Bay in the second half, we did see him kind of try to push the ball downfield when he probably could have taken the easier pass play. So it's kind of a mix of both, right? Sometimes you see him, you can't go broke taking a profit, even though there might have been a guy coming open down the field. You take a profit on like a play that he threw early in the game to Nate Adkins on that first touchdown drive. Just a little short little pass play that, it's not going to go down in the annals of history as one of the great plays, but it's a positive gain. Later in the game, remember the Bucs are playing a little bit of zone defense there, and Bo tried to fit the ball into a window and almost got picked off by the Bucs corner, as opposed to just hitting, I think it was little Jordan Humphrey, who was kind of just sitting right there for a short gain. It would have been an easier pass for him, but he tried to push the ball a little bit. So we see kind of the both and from Bo Nix, and you see the beauty and the ugly from some of it, like the ugly play that you mentioned where the Bucs were luckily offsides. You got a free play. Bo loses the football. And then there's the play that we've been talking about, that everybody's been talking about, the 22-yard run where, oh my gosh, Anthony Nelson is coming from behind like he's playing at Iowa again, and he's about to smack the ball out of Bo's hands. All of a sudden, he turns it in to a 22-yard gain, and I think the announcer said it was a Harry Houdini kind of move there. It was
Bo
impressive. Bo Vic. I love it. Hey, I like that. I like that. So there's the beauty and the ugly of it. But like you said, it's growing pains of a rookie season. And yes, I think if Bo had played this way week 1, would you have been surprised, Cody, because of what we saw in the preseason? I feel like this is the guy that we saw all throughout the preseason that everybody was so excited about.
Yeah, it was. And part of me was wondering too, because I think in this game, we started to see some more things. And you and I, ironically enough, last week, we talked about it, where I went on a little tangent saying, hey, like all the stuff that I have seen Bo do in practice, the practices that were open and closed to like the public, they were not running some of those offensive looks. I felt like this week we saw a lot of that. I mean, you mentioned the zone defense that Tampa was playing quite a bit of. They're playing a lot of cover 2 in this game. And coming off the heels of the Steelers cornerback saying, oh yeah, we made it so easy, the minimized playbook made it easy for us to play. Didn't look minimized in this game here, but I think the approach to, hey, we're going to take the ball to open up the game here, and we're going to open it up by just slinging the rock. Bo was 4 of 4 passing on that first series for 70 yards. The beautiful back shoulder to Cortland, the pop shot to Josh Reynolds, you mentioned the rhythm throw there to Nate Atkins. Like, Bo was just getting some confidence, right? He was getting in rhythm, which was good because it really carried out throughout the entire game. Like, you saw the quick, hey, we're going to fake the handoff here to the running back, and he's going to sidearm sling it for 7 to 8 yards. He even had a play to Javonte Williams on the left side there where Javonte split out wide. And I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, Javonte's on the outside. Okay, they're not going to go to him, so we're going to play off. Bo gets it, fires it quick. It's a 7-yard gain there to Javonte on the outside. And it's like, okay, hey, like now Denver's got second and manageable here. They've got a first down on this play. I want to see a little bit more involvement of Troy Franklin. I liked what I saw from getting him and Marvin Mims on the field at the same exact time. I would say Bo on that one play where he evaded, stepped up right before the line of scrimmage and threw that corner route there to Troy, who just couldn't get 2 feet in. If Bo makes that throw maybe a second sooner, it's a big play there for Troy. Want to see him stay in the Broncos game plan offensively here. I also felt like this was interesting coming from NFL Next Gen stats here. According to them, Ben Powers, Luke Wattenberg, Quinn Miners didn't allow a single pressure on the inside against Tampa Bay in this game. And so I think the difference when you look at weeks 1 and weeks 2 against Pittsburgh, and obviously the Seattle game, there was a combination of pressure inside. There was also a combination of pressure outside. In this game, there was no inside pressure, which is a great sign. You love to see that. Bo was able to operate cleanly in the pocket, and there weren't as many opportunities to have a dirty pocket from the outside, really outside of the left tackle position where a couple guys got by Garrett on a couple of plays. So to me, I felt like overall Denver's offense played to the rate in which we saw them in the preseason and also in training camp. And so now our question here, how do they keep building on that? That's what I'm very curious to see what Sean Payton decides to do this week against the New York Jets, who also have a very tough defense.
And it really goes back to our discussion about the running game, doesn't it? Because I think in order for the Broncos to sustain this offensive success, they're going to need to be able to lean on that running game a little bit more than they have been. Yes, you love the big chunk plays from Tyler Badie, but you've got to have the ability to lean on that a little bit. When you get over the long haul of a season, it's just going to make it so much easier for Bo Nix to open things up in the pass game. We've seen how effective he's been in the running game as well. So I think that's going to continue to be a major factor here. And teams are going to now try to exploit what we saw, I guess, in this game. Like, if you can't get pressure up the middle, bring it off the edge and force Bo to try to kind of fit it into tighter windows downfield. I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward. The Jets, we'll see what they end up doing. They've been one of the best defenses in the league through the first 3 weeks as well. So another tough, maybe brutal task for Bo Nix here, but I like that he's getting these tests early, Cody, because you know what? You just you get thrown into the fire. You want to see, hey, take the training wheels off. Let's see what you got. Execute the offense, operate confidently, go out there and be yourself. And even if you are playing against the best of the best, look, you can still do and play your game within the way that you play it. So I'm excited for it. I know that the results may not always be there for what Broncos Country wants in terms of wins, losses, but this is the most encouraging game that we've seen from the offense in a long time. I mean, since Drew Lock's first couple of starts, Cody, I don't think anybody in Broncos Country has been this excited about a rookie quarterback performance.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it as well. Mike McDonald, good defensive game plan. Obviously, defensive coordinator there, Seattle week 1. Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin in week 2. Todd Bowles here week 3. The Jets obviously have a really good system in place there defensively. It is a good, I'd say, measuring stick a little bit, right? Because it's like, okay, hey, where's Bo struggling? I think we go back to the Steelers game last week. The fact that the Broncos offense was as bad as it was in week 2 against TJ Watt and those guys, you look at what the Steelers were able to do to the Chargers and Justin Herbert there and that offensive game plan that they had, because the Chargers, I mean, they were a little bit red hot. You know, they had the run game going there. TJ Watt is a force of nature. Alex Highsmith playing really well there. For Denver to still have a chance, as bad as their offense was, to be in a one-possession game, have a chance to even find a way to win that game, I think it is impressive. And look, if Bo and the offense can be more consistent, I think better things will come of this season than I think we thought. Because, 0-2, it did seem like very doom and gloom. Like you and I, even after the 0-2, were like, man, all right, like this looks like the Broncos team from last year. And then you see a completely different team. I think Sunday's game against Tampa Bay is the team that they believe they can be going forward. It's just about figuring out how to find a way to make that happen consistently. I think that's the challenge and where we're going to be looking at this team on a week-to-week basis. Doesn't get any easier with the New York Jets game coming up. Obviously, the Broncos on the East Coast this week, so practice will be held there. We'll get to all of the coverage, injury report updates, and more all throughout this week here on Locked On Broncos. Sayre will sit down with John Butch, co-host of the Locked On Jets podcast, for a crossover Thursday episode. A lot to look forward to here, Broncos country, as the team tries to navigate, hey, how can they get to 500 against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets? We look forward to the build-up and the hype all week long here on the show. Make sure you subscribe and follow. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NFL podcast. We'll see you tomorrow.